The man sits alone in a darkened apartment on Gorky Street. Outside, Moscow is dying. Not from bombs, not yet. From fear. The sound of truck engines fills the night as government convoys crawl east toward Kuibyshev, carrying ministers, secrets, and the entire diplomatic corps. The city is bleeding out its leadership. Those who remain move through the streets like ghosts, waiting for the Germans to arrive, waiting to learn what kind of masters they will serve. The man at the window is Alexander Demyanov. He is 33 years old. He has not turned on the lights because he does not need to see the room. He has lived in this apartment for 5 years, but it has never felt like home. It has always felt like a stage. The heavy furniture, the books in French and German on the shelves, the photograph of his mother in a silver frame, all props, all carefully arranged by men who understand that identity is the most dangerous weapon in any war. Demyanov watches a truck full of soldiers rumble past. The faces of the young men are white in the darkness. They are heading west, toward the front, toward Mozhaisk, toward death. He wonders how many of them will be alive by morning. He wonders how many of them he will betray before this is over. A car pulls up outside his building. Black, no markings. The engine idles for exactly 10 seconds, then cuts. This is the signal. Demyanov reaches for his coat. It is an old coat, pre-revolutionary, tailored in Paris. His father wore it to the theater in 1913, the last year of the old world. Demyanov wears it now because it reminds people of what he is supposed to be. A relic. A man out of time. A man who might, if approached correctly, be willing to burn the present to recover the past. The ride to Lubyanka takes 7 minutes. Demyanov has made this journey hundreds of times over the past 12 years. But tonight feels different. Tonight, the building on Dzerzhinsky Square is almost empty. Most of the operatives have been evacuated. The ones who remain are either expendable or essential. Demyanov understands that he is both. He is led to an office on the 3rd floor. The man behind the desk is Leonid Reichman, and Reichman has the look of someone who has not slept in days. Not from fear, from calculation. His eyes are red, but they are clear, focused. On his desk, there are no papers, no maps, just a single photograph. Demyanov recognizes the face. A white general. Dead now. Irrelevant. But the photograph is not about the man. It is about what the man represents. A world that refused to die. Reichman does not offer Demyanov a seat. He simply begins to speak. His voice is low, flat, the voice of a man who has long ago learned that emotion is a luxury for people who do not make life and death decisions. He explains that the Germans are 70 miles from Moscow. He explains that the Abwehr, German military intelligence, has spent the last 2 years building networks among white émigrés in Paris, in Berlin, in Istanbul. They believe that inside the Soviet Union, a resistance is waiting to be activated. They believe that there are thousands, tens of thousands, who would rise against Stalin if given leadership and weapons. They are wrong, of course, but they are willing to act on this belief. They are willing to invest. Reichman pushes a folder across the desk. Inside, Demyanov sees his own life reduced to paper. His father, the Cossack officer who fought the Reds. His mother, the noblewoman who lost everything. His uncle, a prominent Menshevik who fled after the revolution. His friendships from the old days. The sons and daughters of families that Stalin spent the 30s destroying. On paper, Alexander Demyanov is the perfect enemy of the Soviet state. On paper, he is a man who should be in a camp, or dead, In reality, of course, he is none of these things. In reality, since 1929, he has been delivering the names of his friends, his contacts, anyone who might threaten the regime, to the men in this building. He has watched people he grew up with disappear into the system. He has learned that loyalty is a mask, and that the only question is which face you show to which audience. Reichmann closes the folder. He tells Demyanov that the time for small games is over. The Germans are not interested in rumors or gossip. They want action. They want networks. They want men on the ground who can receive weapons, who can coordinate sabotage, who can radio Berlin with intelligence about troop movements and factory production. Demyanov will give them exactly what they want. He will cross the front lines. He will present himself as a monarchist, a man of the old school, desperate to serve any power that can crush Stalin. He will tell them about his contacts in Moscow, about a secret organization of like-minded patriots, about a network waiting for orders. And then, once they believe him, once they have invested in him, once they have poured their resources and their agents and their money into his hands, he will betray every single one of them. Reichmann pauses. For the first time, something flickers in his eyes. Not sympathy, recognition. He knows what he is asking. He knows that Demyanov will walk into a room full of professionals who have spent their lives hunting lies. He knows that one mistake, one hesitation, one detail that does not match, will mean days of torture in a cellar somewhere outside Berlin. He knows that if Demyanov breaks, if he gives up the names of his handlers, the game will be over and dozens of others will die. But he also knows that there is no other way. The Germans are coming. The city is falling apart. Desperate times require desperate instruments. Demyanov looks at the photograph on the desk. The white general. The lost world. He thinks about his father, who died in exile, bitter and broken. He thinks about his mother, who never stopped believing that the old Russia would return. He thinks about the faces of the young soldiers on the truck, going west to die for a system that would have shot them for their birth if they had been born 20 years earlier. He looks at Reichmann and nods. There are no speeches, no handshake, no promises. Reichmann simply nods back and turns to the window. The meeting is over. Demyanov leaves the office and walks down the empty corridor. His footsteps echo on the marble floor. He passes doors behind which, for decades, men have been broken. He passes the ghosts of thousands who entered this building and never left. He is not afraid of them. He has made his peace with ghosts long ago. Outside, the night air hits his face. The city is silent, waiting. Somewhere to the west, the German army is preparing its final push. Somewhere in a bunker in Berlin, men are studying maps of Moscow, planning their victory parade. They have no idea that a man in an old Parisian coat is about to walk into their arms and become the most dangerous weapon the Soviet Union has ever deployed. Demyanov lights a cigarette. His hand is steady. He thinks about the story he will tell the Germans. He thinks about the names he will give them. Names of real people. People who will be arrested and interrogated and possibly shot to make the lie believable. He thinks about the cost of this game, not in rubles or rifles, in human lives. He takes a long drag on the cigarette and exhales slowly into the Moscow night. Then he walks home to pack his bag. In the morning, he will go to war. The forest west of Moscow smells of snow and death. It is December now, 6 weeks since Demyanov sat in Reichmann's office, 6 weeks of waiting, of preparation, of memorizing a biography that must survive the first contact with the enemy. The trees are bare, their black branches scratching at a sky the color of old bone. Somewhere beyond those trees, perhaps 5 kilometers away, the German lines begin. Demyanov moves through the forest alone. He wears civilian clothes, a heavy wool coat, boots that have been worn down to look like they have walked hundreds of kilometers. In his pockets, he carries nothing that can identify him. No papers, no photographs, no documents. A man fleeing the Soviet Union does not carry permission slips. He carries only his story, and his story must be perfect. The cold is brutal. It seeps through the wool, through the layers, into the marrow. Demyanov welcomes it. The cold keeps him awake. The cold keeps him sharp. He has been trained to use discomfort as a tool, to let it focus the mind rather than distract it. 12 years of living 2 lives have prepared him for this moment. 12 years of smiling at people he knew would soon disappear. 12 years of becoming comfortable with the mask. He reaches the edge of the forest. Ahead of him lies a frozen field, then a village that has changed hands 3 times in the last month. The Germans hold it now. He can see smoke rising from chimneys, the shapes of men moving between buildings. He can see a machine gun position at the edge of the village, pointed not toward him, but toward the east, toward Moscow, toward the enemy. Demyanov takes a breath. The air burns his lungs. He steps out of the trees and begins to walk across the open field. His boots crunch on the frozen snow. Each step is loud, obscene in the silence. He does not try to be quiet. He wants them to see him. He wants them to wonder. He wants them to hesitate long enough to take him alive. The first shot cracks over his head. A warning. He stops immediately and raises his hands. He does not look toward the sound. He looks straight ahead, at the village, at the men who are now running toward him with rifles raised. He keeps his face empty, his body still. He has been told that the first 30 seconds will determine everything. If he looks like a spy, they will shoot him in the field and bury him in a shallow grave. If he looks like what he claims to be, a refugee, a deserter, a man with information to sell, they will take him inside. The Germans reach him. There are 3 of them, young, exhausted, their faces hardened by months of fighting. They scream at him in German. He does not understand the words, but he understands the tone. He keeps his hands raised. He keeps his face empty. One of them shoves him hard, and he falls to his knees in the snow. A rifle butt slams into his ribs. The pain is white-hot, surprising. He had forgotten how much the body can hurt. They search him roughly, efficiently. They find nothing. No weapons, no papers, no reason to kill him immediately. One of the soldiers speaks to him in broken Russian, asking who he is, where he came from. Demyanov says only one word. He says the name of a German intelligence officer, a man Reichmann had given him, a name that means nothing to these soldiers, but will mean everything to their commanders. The soldiers look at each other. They do not understand. But they stop hitting him. They march him into the village. He is pushed into a house that serves as a headquarters. The warmth inside is shocking after the cold of the forest. His fingers begin to thaw, and the pain is exquisite. He is left standing in a corner while a soldier goes to find someone who matters. Demyanov looks around the room. He sees maps on the walls, marked with unit positions. He sees a radio in the corner, the operator hunched over it, tapping out messages. He sees the ordinary machinery of war. and he knows that he is now inside it. He has crossed the line. There is no going back. The man who enters is older, probably a captain, with the weary competence of a professional soldier. He speaks Russian well, with an accent, but without hesitation. He asks Demyanov the same questions. "Who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you here?" Demyanov gives his name, his real name, Alexander Demyanov. He says he is from Moscow, from an old family, a family that served the Tsar. He says he has been waiting for this moment for 20 years. He says he has information, valuable information, about the defenses of Moscow, about troop movements, about the mood inside the city. But he will not give this information to a soldier. He will give it only to the Abwehr, to the professionals. The captain studies him for a long moment. Demyanov can feel the weight of that gaze, the calculation behind it. Is this man a fool, a provocateur, a desperate deserter willing to say anything to save his skin? Or is he something else, something real, something valuable? The captain makes a decision. He tells Demyanov that he will be taken to the rear, to a place where men who ask for the Abwehr are handled. He tells him that if he is lying, if he is a plant, they will find out. They always find out. And then he will be shot. Not quickly. Not cleanly. Demyanov nods. He understands. He has known the stakes from the beginning. He is put in the back of a truck with 2 guards. The truck drives west, away from Moscow, away from everything he knows. The roads are rough, frozen mud that shakes his bones. Through the canvas flap, he watches the Russian landscape pass. Villages reduced to rubble. Fields churned by tanks. The detritus of an army in motion. He is moving deeper into enemy territory, deeper into the belly of the beast. The journey takes hours. They stop at a collection of buildings that must have been a collective farm before the war. Now it is something else. There are no signs, no markings, but the men who move between the buildings have a different quality than the soldiers at the front. They are older, quieter. Their eyes miss nothing. This is the Abwehr. This is the place where lies are dissected. Demyanov is taken to a room in the largest building. It is bare except for a table, 2 chairs, and a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls are stained with damp. He is left alone for an hour, then 2. He sits in the chair and waits. He knows this technique. Isolation, uncertainty. Let the suspect's mind do the work of creating fear. He has seen it used on others. Now he feels it himself. The door opens, and 2 men enter. They do not introduce themselves. They sit across from him and begin to ask questions. They ask about his family, his childhood, his education, his friends. They ask about Moscow, about the streets where he lived, about the buildings near his apartment. They ask about the war, about the mood in the city, about the rumors of evacuation. They ask about everything, and they ask it in no particular order, jumping from subject to subject, trying to catch him in inconsistency. Demyanov answers. He gives them the biography he has memorized. He gives them names, real names of people who are dead or in camps or long gone. He gives them details about Moscow that are true but irrelevant. He gives them nothing that can be checked, nothing that can be disproven in this moment. He watches their faces as he speaks. He sees no reaction. They are professionals. They give nothing away. The questioning continues for hours. They bring him bread and water. They let him use a latrine. Then they bring him back and start again. The same questions, the same answers. They are looking for the tiny deviation, the word that changes, the detail that does not match. They find nothing, because there is nothing to find. The lie is perfect because it is mostly true. Finally, the older of the two interrogators leans back in his chair. He looks at Demyanov with something that might be respect, or might be suspicion. It is impossible to tell. He says that Demyanov will remain here for now, that more questions will come, that there are people in Berlin who will want to meet him, that his fate will be decided by men far above their pay grade. Demyanov is taken to a room with a bed and a locked door. He lies down and stares at the ceiling. His body aches from the beating, from the cold, from the hours of sitting in a hard chair. But his mind is clear. He has survived the first contact. He has passed through the initial filter. The real test is still to come. The men in Berlin will be smarter, more experienced, more paranoid. They will have files. They will have informants. They will have ways of checking his story that these soldiers in the field cannot imagine. But for tonight, he is alive. For tonight, he has won. He closes his eyes. Outside, the wind blows across the Russian plain, carrying the sound of artillery from the east. The front is moving. The war is grinding forward. And Alexander Demyanov, the man who was supposed to be dead or in a camp, is now inside the German intelligence service, waiting to begin the most dangerous performance of his life. Berlin in January 1942 is a city that has not yet learned to fear. The bombs have not come in force. The restaurants are still open. The theaters still perform. The cafes still fill with officers in splendid uniforms and women who know how to appreciate them. The war feels distant here, a thing that happens in the east, in the snow, among people who deserve their fate. The city hums with the confidence of victory. Moscow will fall any day now. London will sue for peace. Then the real work of building the 1,000-year Reich can begin. Demyanov observes all of this from the window of a car that carries him through the snowy streets. He has been in Germany for 3 days now, traveling from the front through a series of way stations, each one more comfortable than the last. The beatings are over. The cold is over. Now he is treated as a guest, a valuable asset, a man who may hold the key to the East. The Germans are polite. They are professional. They are watching his every move. The car stops outside a villa in a quiet neighborhood. It is not a prison. It is not a headquarters. It is a safe house, a place where valuable defectors are kept while their stories are verified. Demyanov is shown to a comfortable room with a bed, a desk, and a view of a garden buried in snow. He is told that someone will come for him in the morning. He is told to rest. He does not rest. He lies on the bed and stares at the ceiling and thinks about the men who are even now reading his file, comparing his story against their records, reaching out to their sources. He thinks about the names he has given them, the names of real people who might still be alive, who might be found, who might be asked. He thinks about the thousands of ways this could go wrong. Then he puts the thoughts away. They are useless now. The game is in motion. All he can do is play his part. The man who comes for him in the morning is named Emmerich. He is mid-40s, balding, with the soft hands of a desk officer and the eyes of a hunter. He speaks Russian with a Berlin accent, fluent but careful, as if he has learned it from books rather than people. He does not introduce himself by rank or organization, but Demyanov knows. This is Abwehr. This is the real thing. Emmerich takes Demyanov to another building, this one more official, with guards at the entrance and corridors that stretch into institutional grayness. They pass doors with no names, offices where men in civilian clothes move with purpose. Demyanov is led to a room that could be anywhere. Table, chairs, a single window high on the wall, the furniture of interrogation, dressed up in the language of cooperation. What follows is not an interrogation. Not exactly. It is a conversation, conducted over many hours and many days, in which Emmerich and his colleagues try to understand who Demyanov really is. They ask about his childhood, his family, his education. They ask about his friends, his lovers, his enemies. They ask about Moscow, about the streets where he walked, the buildings where he lived, the people he knew. They ask about the war, about the mood in the city, about the shortages and the rumors and the fear. Demyanov answers. He gives them the truth mostly. The truth is safe. The truth is verifiable. The truth is that he is the son of a Cossack officer, that he grew up in privilege, that his world was destroyed by the revolution. The truth is that he has spent the last 20 years watching his class disappear into prisons and graves. The truth is that he has every reason to hate the Soviet regime. The lie is only in the present. The lie is that he is not working for the NKVD. The lie is that his hatred has curdled into action. The lie is that there are others like him, waiting in Moscow, waiting for the signal. Emmerich listens. Emmerich takes notes. Emmerich asks the same questions from different angles, searching for the crack, the inconsistency, the moment when the mask slips. It never slips. Demyanov has been wearing this mask for 12 years. It fits better than his own face. On the 5th day, something shifts. Emmerich arrives with a different energy, a different tone. He tells Demyanov that his story has been checked, that his background has been verified through multiple sources, that the Abwehr believes he is what he claims to be. He does not say that they believe him completely. Professionals never believe completely, but they believe enough. They believe enough to take the next step. That step is training. Demyanov is moved to a different facility, this one outside Berlin, in the countryside. It is a school for spies. Here he meets other men like himself, or men who are supposed to be like himself. Russians who have turned against Stalin, Ukrainians who want independence, men from the Baltic states who remember when their countries were free. They are all being trained to go back, to infiltrate, to destroy the enemy from within. The training is rigorous. Radio operation, encryption, codes. Demyanov learns to send and receive messages, to compress information into the shortest possible transmission, to change frequencies and hide his signal from direction finders. He learns tradecraft, dead drops, safe houses, recognition signals. He learns how to live as a ghost in his own country. The instructors are professionals. Some are German, veterans of intelligence work in the 20s and 30s. Some are white émigrés, men whose families fled after the revolution, men who have spent 20 years dreaming of return. They look at Demyanov and see a kindred spirit. They look at him and see the future. Demyanov plays the role perfectly. He is the eager student, the committed patriot of the old Russia, the man who will risk everything to strike a blow against Stalin. He asks questions. He takes notes. He practices his radio technique until his fingers ache. He bonds with the other trainees over shared hatred of the regime. He becomes one of them. But at night, alone in his room, he thinks about Moscow. He thinks about Reichmann, about the office on Lubyanka, about the game that is only beginning. He thinks about the messages he will send, the lies he will feed into the German intelligence system, the destruction he will cause. He thinks about the men in this facility, the ones who share meals with him, who laugh at his jokes, who trust him. They will die because of him. Some of them will die soon. He does not allow himself to feel anything about this. Feeling is a luxury he surrendered long ago. After 6 weeks, Emmerich returns. He brings news. The training is complete. The Abwehr is satisfied. Demyanov will be given a mission. He will be inserted back into Moscow, where he will contact his network, establish a radio link, and begin transmitting intelligence to Berlin. He will be the eyes and ears of the Reich inside the enemy capital. He will be one of the most valuable agents in the entire war. Demyanov listens. He nods. He thanks Emmerich for his trust. Inside he is calculating. The insertion will be the most dangerous moment. Crossing the lines again, this time going east into Soviet territory. If the Germans suspect anything, if they decide to test him one last time, they will shoot him in the forest and leave his body for the wolves. But there is no choice. There never was. He packs his bag. He checks his radio, his codes, his papers. He says goodbye to the men he has trained with, the men who will never know that he has already condemned them to death. Then he gets into a car that will take him east, toward the front, toward Moscow, toward the next move in the longest game of his life. The car drives through the German countryside, past villages untouched by war, past farms where life continues as it has for centuries. Demyanov watches it all pass. He thinks about the city he is going to, the city under siege, the city that may not survive the winter. He thinks about the people there, the ones who trust him, the ones who will die to protect his cover. He thinks about the weight of the lie he carries. Then he stops thinking. Thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to mistakes. He empties his mind and becomes what he needs to be: a weapon, a tool, a man without a self. The forest closes in around the road. The sun sets behind him. Ahead, in the darkness, the war waits. Moscow, in February 1942, is a city that has forgotten how to sleep. The German offensive has stalled, pushed back from the outskirts in a desperate winter counterattack. But the siege is not over. The city breathes, but carefully, as if afraid to attract attention. The streets are empty after dark. The windows are blacked out. The cold is a living thing that seeps through walls and into bones. Demyanov walks through these streets on his third night back. He wears the uniform of a Soviet captain now, a necessary disguise for a man who must move through a city at war. The uniform fits poorly, but no one looks too closely. In Moscow, everyone is too tired, too hungry, too focused on survival to notice one more officer going about his business. He is heading for an apartment on Gorky Street, not his own, but one that has been prepared for him, a safe house. A place where he can meet with the men who are now his handlers, the men who will turn his reports from the Germans into weapons against them. The building is dark, like all the others. He climbs the stairs to the 4th floor, counting the steps automatically, a habit from years of operational tradecraft. 3 knocks on the door. A pause. 2 more. The door opens. The man inside is not Reichmann. Reichmann is too senior for this kind of field meeting. This man is younger, intense, with the sharp features of someone who has risen fast in an organization that rewards results. His name is Fyodor, or at least that is the name Demyanov knows him by. In truth, Demyanov does not want to know his real name. Names are liabilities in this business. Fyodor has been waiting for this moment for months. Since Demyanov crossed the lines, since the first reports came back from Berlin, since the Abwehr took the bait. Now the real work begins. Now they must build the fiction that will sustain the game. The apartment is bare. A table, 2 chairs, a bed in the corner that looks unused. On the table, a radio transmitter sits next to a stack of blank paper and a bottle of ink. This is the command post. This is where the battle will be fought. Fyodor explains the plan. Demyanov will begin transmitting to Berlin immediately, using the codes and frequencies he learned in the Abwehr school. His first messages will be simple: confirmations of his safe arrival, reports on the mood in Moscow, small pieces of intelligence that are true but worthless. The Germans must be fed carefully, like predators that need to be kept interested but not overwhelmed. But the real work is the creation of the network. The Germans believe that Demyanov is part of a larger organization, an underground movement of monarchists and anti-Soviet patriots waiting for the moment to rise. That organization must now become real. On paper, in the minds of the Abwehr, in the radio traffic that will flow from this apartment for years to come. The organization needs a name. Fyodor has one ready. They will call it the Throne. A monarchist reference, simple, evocative, easy for the Germans to remember and believe. The Throne will have members, dozens of them, spread across Moscow, holding positions in factories, in transportation, even in the military. The Throne will have a leader, a figure of authority, who can lend weight to the enterprise. And here, Fyodor reveals the masterstroke. The leader will be a real person, a figure known throughout Russia, a man whose name carries weight with the old believers, with the clergy, with anyone who remembers the world before the revolution. Metropolitan Vedensky, the head of the Renovationist Church, a man who has spent years navigating the impossible waters between faith and the Soviet state. Demyanov stares at Fyodor. This is madness. Vedensky is a public figure. He meets with officials. He gives sermons. He is watched constantly by the NKVD, by the party, by everyone. If the Germans ever learn that their supposed underground leader is a Soviet puppet, the game ends instantly. Fyodor smiles. It is not a warm expression. He explains that Vedensky is already working with them. Not as an agent, not exactly, but as a patriot who understands that this war requires strange alliances. The Metropolitan has been approached. He has been asked to play a role, to lend his name and his authority to a fiction that will save Russian lives. He has agreed, not out of love for the NKVD, out of love for Russia. Demyanov tries to absorb this. The scale of the deception is staggering. It is one thing to create a fictional organization. It is another to put a real person, a man of God, at its head. If this works, the Germans will believe anything. If it fails, the consequences are unimaginable. But he has no time to dwell on it. The work begins immediately. That night, Demyanov sits at the table and composes his first message to Berlin. He reports that he is safe, that he has made contact with his people, that the network is intact and waiting for instructions. He signs it with his code name, the one the Germans gave him, Alexander. Fyodor watches as he transmits. The radio crackles. The signal goes out into the night, bouncing off the ionosphere, carrying the lie to the men who are even now sitting in a villa outside Berlin, waiting for news from their agent inside the enemy capital. The response comes within hours. The Germans are pleased. They congratulate Alexander on his safe return. They instruct him to begin building his network, to identify key targets, to prepare for the day when the Reich returns to Moscow. They sign off with a promise. More resources are coming. Money, equipment, personnel, all of it will flow through Alexander into the hands of the throne. Demyanov reads the message and feels nothing. He has been doing this too long to feel anything. He simply nods to Fyodor and begins composing the next message, the one that will feed the Germans the first piece of false intelligence, carefully crafted to sound real, carefully designed to be useless. The game has begun in earnest. In the weeks that follow, a rhythm develops. Demyanov transmits every 3 days, always at night, always from different locations around the city. He reports on the activities of the throne, on the recruitment of new members, on the mood among the workers and the soldiers. He invents names, faces, conversations. He builds a world out of words. The Germans respond with enthusiasm. They send instructions, requests for specific intelligence, suggestions for sabotage targets. They also send money, delivered by couriers who parachute into the countryside, carrying bundles of rubles and German marks. The couriers are met by NKVD teams, arrested before they can make contact with anyone. Their radios are added to the growing arsenal. Their codes are studied and broken. Their stories are used to build the legend of the throne even further. But the most valuable deliveries are the ones that never arrive. The Germans, convinced that the throne is real and growing, begin to plan larger operations. They prepare to drop weapons, explosives, even additional agents, all of whom will be welcomed into the arms of the waiting NKVD. Every shipment that is intercepted, every agent who is captured, is a victory won without a single shot fired on the front lines. Demyanov becomes a ghost. He moves through Moscow unseen, unknown, a man who exists only in the radio waves and in the minds of his German handlers. He has no friends, no lovers, no life outside the game. The apartment on Gorky Street is his world. The radio is his voice. The messages are his only connection to humanity. Sometimes, late at night, he thinks about the Metropolitan, about Vidensky, sitting in his church, delivering sermons to congregations, who have no idea that their spiritual leader is playing a role in the most dangerous deception of the war. He wonders what the Metropolitan thinks about when he is alone. Does he pray? Does he ask forgiveness for the lies he tells? Or has he, like Demyanov, learned to separate his public face from his private soul? The questions have no answers. Demyanov stops asking them. The game demands total commitment, total focus. There is no room for doubt, for reflection, for humanity. There is only the next transmission, the next message, the next move in a game that neither side fully understands. Spring comes to Moscow. The snow melts. The days grow longer. The front stabilizes, then begins to move west as the Red Army gathers strength for the offensives to come. And through it all, the radio in the apartment on Gorky Street keeps ticking, sending its lies into the night, feeding the German appetite for intelligence that will never arrive, for victories that will never come. The Abwehr believes. The Abwehr invests. The Abwehr trusts. And Alexander Demyanov, the man who does not exist, waits for the next act to begin. The summer of 1942 burns across Russia like a fever. The German armies have regrouped, turned south toward Stalingrad and the Caucasus, and Moscow breathes again, though carefully. The city has survived the worst, but the worst is not over. In the apartments and offices of the Lubyanka, the men who run the game watch the front lines move and calculate their next moves with the cold precision of chess players. Demyanov has been transmitting for 6 months now. 6 months of lies, of invented networks, of fictional meetings with people who do not exist. The Germans have never questioned him. They have never asked for proof they could verify. They believe because they want to believe, because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. The throne is real because the Abwehr needs it to be real. And because they believe, they send gifts. The first major drop comes on a moonless night in July. An NKVD team waits in a clearing outside Mozhaisk, west of Moscow, watching the sky. They know the coordinates. They know the time. The Germans have transmitted the details to Alexander, believing they are sending weapons and explosives to their underground army. In truth, they are sending them directly into the hands of the people they are trying to destroy. The drone of engines comes first, then the silhouette of a transport plane, flying low to avoid radar. The plane passes over the clearing, and the sky fills with parachutes. 6 of them. 6 containers drifting down through the darkness, each one packed with enough explosives to blow a train off its tracks or a factory into rubble. The NKVD team moves efficiently. They round up the containers, haul them into trucks, and drive them back to Moscow before dawn. By morning, the contents are being catalogued in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. German rifles, German explosives, German radios, German money, all of it now in Soviet hands, all of it paid for by the faith of the Abwehr in their agent, Alexander. Demyanov transmits a confirmation the next night. The delivery was received, he reports. The weapons have been distributed to trusted members of the throne. The men are eager to begin operations. They await instructions from Berlin. The Germans are delighted. They send congratulations. They send more money. They send requests for sabotage targets, for intelligence on troop movements, for confirmation that their investment is paying dividends. They do not know that every rifle they have sent is now in a Soviet warehouse. They do not know that every ruble they have spent is now funding the war against them. The pattern repeats. Month after month, the drops continue. Sometimes they bring weapons. Sometimes they bring explosives. Sometimes they bring agents, men and women trained in the Abwehr schools, sent to join the throne and help build the underground army. Every one of them is met by NKVD teams. Every one of them is arrested within hours of landing. Some are turned, forced to transmit under Soviet control. Some are shot. Some simply disappear into the system. Their names added to the endless lists of the disappeared. Demyanov never meets them. He never sees their faces. He hears only their code names, their backgrounds, their instructions. They are names on paper, voices on the radio, ghosts who exist only in the traffic between Berlin and Moscow. He does not allow himself to think about what happens to them. Thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to mistakes, but the mistakes are not always on the German side. In October, a courier arrives in Moscow with papers that identify him as a captain in the Red Army. His name is Ivanov. His documents are perfect. His uniform is correct. His story is that he has been sent from the front with dispatches for the general staff. No one questions him. No one stops him. He walks through the streets of Moscow, past the Lubyanka, past the Kremlin, toward the address he has memorized. The address where he is supposed to meet Alexander. The address where the throne will welcome him as a brother. He does not know that the address is watched. He does not know that the NKVD has been waiting for someone like him for months. He does not know that every step he takes is being observed by men who have been doing this work since before he was born. He reaches the apartment building. He climbs the stairs. He knocks on the door. 3 knocks. A pause. 2 more. The door opens. The man inside is not Alexander. The man inside is Fyodor, and behind him are 3 others with the flat eyes of professionals. Ivanov understands immediately. He has been trained to recognize disaster. He turns to run, but they are faster. They drag him inside. The door closes. The street outside is empty, silent, oblivious. What happens next takes place in a basement on Lubyanka. The details do not matter. The result is inevitable. Ivanov talks. They always talk. He gives them his codes, his frequencies, his instructions. He tells them about the network in Berlin, about the other agents being prepared, about the plans for the winter. He talks for hours, then days, then weeks. By the time he is finished, the NKVD knows more about the Abwehr's operations than the Abwehr knows about itself. Demyanov learns about Ivanov from Fyodor. He learns that the courier was supposed to join the throne to help coordinate sabotage operations, to become Alexander's right hand. He learns that Ivanov was a true believer, a white émigré, who had spent 20 years waiting for this moment, who had volunteered for the mission, who had kissed his wife goodbye in Berlin knowing he might never see her again. He learns that Ivanov was shot 3 days ago in the basement of the Lubyanka, buried in an unmarked grave, erased from existence as if he had never been born. Demyanov listens to this information and feels nothing. Or rather, he feels the nothing that he has trained himself to feel, the emptiness that allows him to continue, the void at the center of his being where normal men keep their hearts. The game continues. Winter comes again. The front lines freeze. Stalingrad becomes a slaughterhouse. The German Sixth Army is surrounded, starving, dying in the snow. And still the drops continue. Still the Germans send weapons and money and men into the arms of the NKVD. Still they believe in Alexander, in the throne, in the underground army that will rise when the moment is right. Demyanov transmits every 3 days. He reports on the mood in Moscow, on the movements of troops, on the conversations he overhears in the streets. All of it is carefully crafted, true enough to be believable, false enough to be useless. He invents meetings with Metropolitan Vidensky, reports on the Metropolitan's sermons, his mood, his influence among the faithful. The Germans eat it up. They cannot get enough. Sometimes, in the dead of night, alone in the apartment on Gorky Street, Demyanov looks at the radio and wonders how long this can continue. The Germans are not stupid. Eventually they will notice that their agents are disappearing. Eventually they will notice that the sabotage never happens. Eventually they will ask the question that no one has asked yet. Why? But eventually is not now. Now there is only the next transmission, the next lie, the next gift from Berlin. The warehouse on the outskirts of Moscow fills with German weapons. The cells in the Lubyanka fill with German agents. The files in the NKVD archives fill with German codes, German frequencies, German plans. All of it flowing through one man. All of it made possible by one lie. Alexander Demyanov sits in his room and waits for the next drop, waits for the next courier, waits for the next move in a game that has already lasted longer than anyone expected. The war grinds on, millions die, cities burn, empires crumble, and in a small apartment on Gorky Street, a radio crackles to life, carrying lies into the night. The year is 1944. Everything has changed. The Red Army has swept westward across the Ukraine, through Belarus, into Poland. The Germans are retreating everywhere, their armies shattered, their cities burning under the weight of Allied bombs. In Berlin, the mood is no longer confident. It is desperate. The men who once planned victory parades through Moscow now plan last stands in their own capital. And still the radio in the apartment on Gorky Street keeps transmitting. Demyanov has been playing this game for almost 3 years now. 3 years of lies, 3 years of invented networks, 3 years of watching German agents walk into traps and German weapons fill Soviet warehouses. He has become a machine, a thing that exists only to transmit and receive. The man he was before the war has faded into a memory, distant and irrelevant. But now the game is entering its most dangerous phase. The Germans are no longer confident. They are suspicious. They are desperate for victories, for intelligence, for anything that might slow the Soviet advance, and desperation makes them dangerous. The first sign of trouble comes in a routine transmission. The Germans ask for a meeting, not a radio meeting, a face-to-face meeting. They want Alexander to cross the lines, to come to Berlin, to report in person on the state of the throne. They have questions that cannot be answered over the air. They have plans that require direct discussion. Demyanov reads the message and feels something he has not felt in years. Fear. Real fear. Not the controlled tension of a dangerous operation, but the cold dread of a trap closing. He takes the message to Fyodor. Fyodor reads it and goes pale. They both understand what this means. If Demyanov goes to Berlin, he will be interrogated by men who have spent years perfecting the art of extracting truth. Men who have access to files, to informants, to records that could expose the lie. Men who will not be satisfied with the same questions asked in the same ways. Men who will dig until they find something. If Demyanov refuses to go, the Germans will suspect. They will wonder why their star agent is avoiding personal contact. They will begin to question the transmissions, the intelligence, the entire structure of the throne. The game will unravel. There is no good option. There is only the choice between two forms of disaster. Fyodor takes the problem to his superiors. Days pass. The Germans grow impatient. They transmit again, demanding an answer. Demyanov stalls, reporting that the situation in Moscow is complicated, that he cannot leave immediately, that he needs time to arrange his absence. The Germans accept this for now, but they will not accept it forever. Then a solution emerges, not from Moscow, from Berlin itself. The Germans have a problem of their own. Their intelligence network inside the Soviet Union has been gutted. Agents disappear. Transmissions go silent. They have no reliable sources left except Alexander. They need more. They need new agents, new networks, new ways of gathering information. And they have a candidate, a man named Igor, a Soviet officer captured at Stalingrad, turned in the prisoner camps, trained in the Abwehr schools. He is eager, intelligent, well-connected. He has family in Moscow, contacts in the military, the potential to build a network that could rival the throne. The Germans want to send him in. They want Alexander to meet him, to vouch for him, to help him establish himself. They transmit Igor's background, his codes, his planned insertion point. They ask Alexander to confirm that he can receive him, that the throne has room for another operative, that the network is secure. Demyanov reads the message and understands immediately. This is the answer. This is how he avoids Berlin. He transmits back. He welcomes Igor. He promises to meet him personally, to integrate him into the throne, to use his connections to expand the network. He asks only for time, for the chance to prepare the ground, to ensure that Igor's arrival is handled with the care it deserves. The Germans agree. Igor will be inserted within the month. Alexander will meet him. The network will grow. What the Germans do not know is that Igor will never meet Alexander. He will meet an NKVD reception committee. He will be arrested within hours of landing. He will be interrogated, turned, or shot. And then he will become the solution to the Berlin problem. Because Igor, once turned, will transmit to his German handlers. He will report that he has met Alexander, that the throne is real, that the network is strong. He will confirm everything the Germans want to hear. And then, when the Germans ask again about Alexander coming to Berlin, Igor will have an answer. He will report that Alexander cannot leave, that the situation is too dangerous, that the throne needs him in Moscow, but that Igor himself can come. Igor can report in person. Igor can carry the messages, the intelligence, the updates that Alexander cannot deliver himself. The Germans will accept this. They have no choice. They need information. They need contact. They need to believe that their network still exists. And Igor, the turned agent, the man who now works for both sides, will give them exactly what they want. Demyanov watches this plan develop with a kind of distant admiration. The layers of deception are staggering. A fake network built around a real man. A real agent turned into a fake asset. A meeting that never happens, used to confirm a lie that must be believed. It is beautiful in its way. A work of art, crafted from human lives. Igor is inserted on a moonless night in March. The plane flies low over the forest, the parachute opens, the man drifts down into the waiting arms of the NKVD. He is taken to a safe house, interrogated, given the choice. Turn or die. He turns. They always turn. Within a week, he is transmitting to Berlin. He reports a successful meeting with Alexander. He describes the throne in glowing terms. He promises to expand the network, to recruit new agents, to provide the intelligence the Reich so desperately needs. The Germans are overjoyed. They have 2 agents now, 2 sources inside the enemy capital. The network is growing. And Igor, the turned agent, becomes the tenor in Berlin, the voice that sings the song the Germans want to hear, the instrument that carries the lie deeper into the heart of the Abwehr. Months pass. The Red Army advances. The Germans retreat. The bombs fall on Berlin. And still the radio traffic continues. Alexander transmits from Moscow. Igor transmits from Moscow. The Germans listen, believe, and send more instructions, more requests, more desperate pleas for intelligence that will never come. Demyanov and Igor never meet. They exist in separate worlds, separate safe houses, separate frequencies. They are both ghosts, voices in the static, men who have surrendered their identities to the game. Demyanov does not know what Igor looks like. Igor does not know that Alexander is the reason he is here, the reason his life has been saved or stolen, depending on how you look at it. The game has become self-sustaining. a machine that runs on lies, fueled by German desperation, lubricated by Soviet cunning. It will continue until the war ends, until Berlin falls, until there is no one left on the other end of the frequency to receive the transmissions. Demyanov sits in his apartment on Gorky Street and waits for that day. He does not know when it will come. He does not know what will happen to him when it does. He only knows that the game is not over, that there are more transmissions to send, more lies to tell, more lives to trade. In Berlin, the tenor sings on. January 1945. The sound of artillery echoes across the frozen plains of East Prussia. The Red Army has crossed the German border, and the Reich is collapsing inward like a burning building. Refugees clog the roads, fleeing west from the vengeance that follows them. Soldiers abandon their units, their weapons, their oaths. The 1,000-year Reich has 18 months left, but no one in the East believes it anymore. In a villa outside Berlin, the men who have run the throne operation for 3 years pack their files and prepare to flee. They have lost track of their agents, lost confidence in their sources, lost faith in everything except the certainty of defeat. But one thread remains, one connection to the East that still transmits, still reports, still promises intelligence from inside the enemy capital. Alexander is still on the air. The Germans do not know that Alexander has been moved, that the apartment on Gorky Street is empty now, that Demyanov transmits from a new location, that the network he supposedly runs has been absorbed into the advancing front lines. They only know that the signal still comes, that the voice still speaks, that somewhere in the chaos of the Soviet advance, their man is still there. The final phase of the game begins with a transmission from Berlin. It is not a request for intelligence. It is an order. Alexander is to abandon his post. He is to gather his most trusted people, destroy his equipment, and make his way west. There are still German units fighting in the Courland pocket, still pockets of resistance in the forests of East Prussia. Alexander is to find them, link up with them, and continue the fight from behind Soviet lines. Demyanov reads the message and understands what it means. The Germans are not trying to save him. They are trying to use him one last time. They want a guerrilla war in the rear of the advancing Red Army. They want sabotage, disruption, chaos. They want Alexander to become the leader of a resistance that does not exist. He takes the message to his handlers. The men who run the game now are different from the ones who started it. Reichmann is gone, promoted, moved to other responsibilities. Fyodor is gone, transferred to the front. The new men are younger, harder, focused on the final push to Berlin. They look at the message and see an opportunity. The game does not have to end. It can follow the Germans into their final redoubt. It can become a weapon in the last battle. They tell Demyanov to agree, to transmit that he will do as ordered, to begin the process of moving west, of gathering his non-existent network, of preparing for the final act. But he will not move alone. He will be followed, watched, protected by units of SMERSH, the counterintelligence organization that has grown out of the wartime chaos. And when the Germans make contact, when they reveal their final positions, when they show their hand one last time, the trap will close. Demyanov transmits his agreement. The Germans are relieved, grateful, desperate. They send coordinates. A meeting point in the Masurian Lakes district, a region of forests and water where scattered German units are making their last stand. They tell Alexander to come alone, to bring only his most trusted men, to prepare for a new phase of the war. The Germans do not know that Alexander is bringing an army. Demyanov leaves Moscow in February. He travels by train, by truck, on foot, moving west through a landscape that has been transformed by war. The cities are rubble, the villages are empty, the roads are choked with refugees going east and soldiers going west, a confused river of humanity flowing in opposite directions. He wears the uniform of a Soviet major now, a disguise that allows him to move freely through the rear areas. His papers identify him as a staff officer on special assignment. No one questions him. No one looks too closely. In the chaos of the advance, everyone is too busy to notice one more officer. He reaches the forward areas in early March. The front line is fluid here, a series of pockets and strong points, rather than a continuous line. German units are surrounded, fighting to the death, or trying to break out to the west. The forests are full of stragglers, deserters, men who have lost their units and their purpose. It is the perfect environment for a guerrilla war. It is also the perfect environment for an ambush. Demyanov makes contact with the German forward posts, using the codes he has carried for 3 years. The Germans are astonished. They had given up hope of seeing Alexander. They had assumed he was dead, captured, lost in the chaos. But here he is, a ghost from the past, materializing in the forest with information about Soviet troop movements and promises of resistance to come. They take him to their commander, a colonel, young for his rank, with the hollow eyes of a man who has seen too much. He commands a battle group of perhaps 500 men, remnants of divisions that no longer exist. They are dug into the forests, waiting for orders that will never come, hoping for relief that is impossible. The colonel looks at Demyanov and sees a miracle. A man from the east, a man with intelligence, a man who can tell them what is happening beyond their shrinking perimeter. Demyanov tells them what they want to hear. The Soviets are overextended. Their supply lines are stretched thin. Their morale is low. A determined resistance could tie down entire divisions, disrupt the advance on Berlin, buy time for something, anything, to change the course of the war. The colonel listens. The colonel believes. The colonel begins to plan. What the colonel does not know is that every word Demyanov speaks is being recorded, that the coordinates of his headquarters have been transmitted to Soviet artillery, that the units surrounding his position are already moving into place, that the miracle he has welcomed is actually the instrument of his destruction. For 3 days, Demyanov stays with the German battle group. He eats their food, drinks their coffee, listens to their stories. He learns their names, their histories, their hopes. He watches them prepare for a resistance that will never happen. He feels nothing. He has learned to feel nothing. On the 4th day, the attack comes. Soviet artillery opens up at dawn, shelling the German positions with precision that can only come from exact coordinates. The forest erupts in flame and steel. Men die screaming. The survivors try to flee, but the ring is closed. Tanks advance through the smoke. Infantry follow, clearing the trenches with flamethrowers and grenades. Demyanov is in the command bunker when the first shells hit. The colonel looks at him, and in that moment, understanding dawns. The man from Moscow, the agent, the miracle. It was all a lie. All of it. 3 years of intelligence, of networks, of promises. All lies. The colonel reaches for his pistol, but before he can raise it, the bunker door crashes open and Soviet soldiers pour in. They drag the colonel away. They pull Demyanov from the bunker, through the smoke, past the bodies, into the cold air of the forest. The battle lasts for hours. When it is over, the German battle group has ceased to exist. 500 men are dead or captured. Their weapons, their equipment, their intelligence, all of it is gone. The resistance that was supposed to tie down Soviet divisions has been destroyed before it could begin. Demyanov stands at the edge of the forest and watches the smoke rise. Soldiers move past him, ignoring him, treating him as what his papers say he is: a staff officer, a witness, a man who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He thinks about the colonel, about the men who shared their food with him, about the faces he saw in the bunker when the shells hit. He thinks about 3 years of lies, of games, of lives traded for information. He thinks about the thousands of German agents who never knew they were walking into traps. He thinks about the men who died because of him. Then he stops thinking. Thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to mistakes. He turns away from the smoke and walks back toward the rear, toward the radio, toward the next transmission, the next lie, the next move in a game that is almost over. Behind him, the forest burns. May 1945. Berlin is a corpse. The city that once planned to rule the world for 1,000 years lies in ruins, its streets buried under rubble, its buildings hollow shells, its people moving like ghosts through the wreckage. The red flag flies from the Reichstag. Soviet soldiers scrawl graffiti on the walls of the chancellery. In a bunker beneath the city, the man who started it all is ashes, scattered in a ditch. The war is over, but the game is not. Demyanov arrives in Berlin in the second week of May, traveling with a SMERSH unit, tasked with hunting down the remnants of German intelligence. He walks through streets that smell of death and smoke, past buildings he remembers from his training 3 years ago. The villa where Emmerich questioned him is a burned-out shell. The school where he learned to transmit is now a barracks for Soviet troops. The world he infiltrated has been erased. He is taken to a building in the suburb of Karlshorst, where the Soviet military administration has established its headquarters. The offices are crowded with officers, translators, intelligence analysts, all of them processing the spoils of victory. Files captured from the Abwehr are being sorted, translated, filed. Thousands of documents, thousands of names, thousands of secrets. Demyanov is given a desk and a stack of files. His job is to review the German records of Operation Monastery, to see what the enemy knew, what they believed, how the game looked from the other side. He opens the first file and begins to read. The Germans kept everything. Every transmission from Alexander, every report from the throne, every analysis of the intelligence flowing out of Moscow. The files are thick with paper, dense with detail. Demyanov reads his own words, his own lies, recorded and preserved by men who believed them with all their hearts. He reads the early transmissions, the cautious reports from 1942, when the Germans were still testing him. He reads the later transmissions, the confident assessments from 1943, when the throne had become their most trusted source. He reads the desperate messages from 1944, when they begged for intelligence that might slow the Soviet advance. He reads the final orders from 1945, the Zhiling to begin guerrilla warfare in the German rear. And he reads their analysis, page after page of analysis, trying to understand the Soviet Union, through the lens of his lies. They built entire theories based on his reports. They adjusted their operations based on his intelligence. They committed resources, agents, money based on his words. And never, in all that time, did they suspect. There is one file that stops him. It is marked with his name, his real name. Inside, the Germans have compiled everything they knew about Alexander Demyanov before he crossed the lines. His family background, his education, his connections, his supposed hatred of the Soviet regime. It is all there, all accurate, all verified by their sources. And at the bottom, a notation in red ink, a single word. Geprüft. Verified. They verified him. They checked every detail of his story. They found nothing wrong because the story was true. The truth was the perfect cover for the lie. Demyanov closes the file and sets it aside. He does not know what to feel. Triumph? Emptiness? Relief? The game is over. He has won. But winning feels like nothing. In the weeks that follow, he helps the SMERSH teams process the captured intelligence. He identifies German agents from the descriptions in the files, helps track down those who are still alive, testifies at interrogations. He meets men he trained with in the Abwehr school, men who look at him with disbelief, then hatred, then nothing. He watches them be loaded onto trucks for the long journey east, to the camps, to the years of silence that await them. He does not allow himself to think about what happens to them. Thinking is dangerous. Thinking leads to questions that have no answers. One day he is called to a meeting with a general he does not know. The general's office is in the same building, but larger, cleaner, with windows that look out over the ruined city. The general is polite, professional. He thanks Demyanov for his service. He tells him that Operation Monastery was one of the most successful intelligence operations in the history of the Soviet Union. 600 days of continuous radio contact, over 80 transmissions, dozens of German agents captured, tons of weapons and equipment seized, incalculable damage to the German war effort. The general pushes a folder across the desk. Inside there is a citation, the Order of the Red Banner, one of the highest awards the state can give. Demyanov looks at it and feels nothing. The paper means nothing. The words mean nothing. He has spent 4 years living a lie. A piece of paper cannot make it real. The general seems to understand. He does not offer congratulations. He simply nods and says that Demyanov will be returned to Moscow, that there will be other assignments, that the state does not forget its heroes. Demyanov leaves the office and walks through the ruined streets of Berlin. He passes the Brandenburg Gate, scarred by bullets. He passes the Reichstag, covered in Soviet graffiti. He passes the Tiergarten, where desperate Berliners have planted vegetable gardens among the statues. The city is a graveyard, and he is walking through it alone. He thinks about the men who believed in him. Emmerich, who trusted him enough to send him back to Moscow. The instructors at the Abwehr school, who taught him their trade. The agents he trained with, who shared their dreams of a Russia free from Stalin. The couriers who walked into traps. The colonel in the Masurian forest, who reached for his pistol too late. He thinks about the faces he will never see again, the names he will never speak, the lives that ended because of him. And he thinks about himself, about the man he was before the war, the man who had friends, who had feelings, who had a self. That man is gone. He died somewhere in the forest west of Moscow, or in the interrogation room in Berlin, or in the apartment on Gorky Street. transmitting lies into the night. The man who walks through Berlin now is something else. A shell, an instrument, a ghost. The truck takes him to the airfield. He boards a plane bound for Moscow. The city rises beneath him, the same city he left 4 years ago, the same city he saved with his lies. It looks different now, smaller, dimmer. He cannot explain why. He is given an apartment, a good apartment, in a building reserved for deserving officers. He is given a job, a desk job, analyzing intelligence from the new front lines of the Cold War. He is given a life, a normal life, with normal hours and normal people and normal conversations about normal things. He cannot live it. He sits in his apartment at night and listens to the silence. There is no radio, no transmissions, no codes, no voices from Berlin begging for intelligence. Just silence. The silence of the air. The silence of a game that has ended. Sometimes he reaches for the place where his codes used to be. Sometimes he catches himself thinking in frequencies. Sometimes he hears a sound that might be a signal, and his heart stops for a moment before he remembers. The game is over. There is no one left to transmit to. He does not know if this is freedom or prison. He does not know if he has won or lost. He only knows that the silence is the hardest thing he has ever endured. The years pass. The war becomes a memory. New wars begin. New enemies emerge. New agents are trained. New games are played. Demyanov fades into the background, a name in files, a legend in the archives. The young officers who come after him do not know his name. They do not know what he did. They do not know that the game they are learning to play was perfected by a man who sat alone in an apartment on Gorky Street and lied to an empire for 600 days. Sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and the ghosts are restless, he thinks about the radio, about the crackle of the signal, about the moment of connection, the moment when his voice crossed the void and became real in someone else's ears. He misses it. He misses the game. He misses the lies. But the radio is silent. The game is over. And Alexander Demyanov, the man who did not exist, sits alone in the darkness and waits for nothing.